Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance vessel Defiant, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the massive view screen. The stars looked the same as they always had, but everything else had changed. The galaxy was no longer safe. "Status report," he said, his voice calm despite the tension that filled the bridge. Lieutenant Tom Davis looked up from his console, his face pale. "The Arcturus Empire has just activated their shield network, sir. Their entire system is now cut off from the rest of the galaxy." Walker nodded grimly. That made three major powers who had sealed themselves away in the past week. First the Blue Star Republic, then the Highland Dominion, and now Arcturus. The Stellar Collective was falling apart piece by piece. "Any response to our messages?" Walker asked. "No, sir," Communications Officer Lisa Park replied. "They've gone completely silent. Same as the others." Walker turned to his second-in-command, Commander Ben Ross. "Opinions?" Ross shook his head. "They're scared. All of them. And I can't blame them." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what, or rather who, the aliens were afraid of: the Void. They had appeared without warning just 2 weeks ago, emerging from unknown space beyond the galactic rim. Black ships that moved like living things, consuming everything in their path. 3 outer colony worlds had already fallen. "Captain," Davis called out suddenly, "I'm detecting a massive energy surge from the Arcturus barrier." Walker turned sharply. On screen. The view screen shifted to show the Arcturus system. A shimmering wall of energy was forming around the entire system, spanning billions of kilometers. It looked like a soap bubble encasing dozens of worlds and thousands of ships. Then, with a flash that made the bridge crew shield their eyes, the barrier solidified. "My God," Ross whispered. "They've trapped thousands of refugee ships outside their shield." Walker zoomed the view in, showing countless civilian vessels drifting helplessly near the now impenetrable barrier. The ships had fled from worlds in the path of the Void, seeking protection from the mighty Arcturus Empire. And they had been abandoned. Among those ships were at least 30 Earth vessels. Walker's fist tightened. "Open a channel to Earth Command," he ordered. "Channel open, sir." The weathered face of Admiral Mary Grant appeared on the screen. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, which was probably true. "Captain Walker," she said, "I take it you've witnessed what's happening at Arcturus." "Yes, Admiral. They've activated their ancient defense system and stranded thousands of refugees, including our people." Grant nodded wearily. "The same thing is happening throughout the collective. Every major power is retreating behind their borders." "What about us? Does Earth have similar technology?" The Admiral's silence was answer enough. Humanity, relatively new to the galactic scene, had never developed the kind of planetary shields that the ancient empires possessed. "The Council is meeting now," Grant said finally. "Some want to surrender to the Void. Others think we should fight." Her expression hardened. "I want you to bring the Defiant home, Captain. We need every ship we have." Walker hesitated. "Admiral, with respect, there are Earth citizens stranded out there. The Defiant could evacuate some of them." "Your orders are to return to Earth immediately, Captain." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Walker stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew. "Set course for the refugee fleet," he said quietly. Ross stepped closer. "Sir, our orders." "I know what our orders are, Commander." Walker met his gaze steadily. "But I also know what's right. We don't leave our people behind." The commander hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." The Defiant changed course, moving swiftly toward the mass of stranded ships. As they approached, Walker could see the desperation in the haphazard way the vessels clustered together. "Incoming transmission from one of the Earth ships," Park announced. "Put it through." The screen showed a middle-aged man with a dirt-smudged face. Behind him, Walker could see dozens of people crowded into what looked like a cargo hold. "This is Captain Travis of the merchant vessel North Star. Thank God you're here." The Arcturians closed their borders without warning. We have over 300 refugees on board, mostly families from the outer colonies. Life support is failing. And a distant boom echoed through the transmission, and the ship shook. What was that? Walker demanded. Travis's face went pale. They're here. The void found us. The transmission cut to show a view outside the ship. 3 massive black vessels were approaching the refugee fleet, their surfaces rippling like oil on water. Red alert, Walker ordered. Battle stations. The Defiant's crew rushed to their positions as the ship's alarms blared. We're outgunned, sir, Ross warned. The Defiant wasn't built to face whatever those things are. Walker knew he was right. The Defiant was a diplomatic vessel with moderate defenses, not a warship, but he also knew they couldn't abandon those people. Target the lead void ship, he commanded. Fire everything we've got. The Defiant surged forward, weapon systems coming online. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out, striking the nearest void vessel. For a moment, the black surface rippled more violently. Then it simply absorbed the attack. No effect, sir, Davis reported, voice tight with tension. Keep firing. Get between them and the refugee ships. The Defiant moved into position, continuing to fire as it placed itself as a shield between the void and their prey. The black ships paused, seeming almost confused by this act of defiance. Walker opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain James Walker of Earth Alliance. All vessels capable of faster-than-light travel, prepare to jump on my mark. Those without FTL, dock with ships that have it. We're getting everyone out of here. A chorus of desperate acknowledgments came through. Walker watched as the refugee ships began to organize, the stronger helping the weaker. The void vessels started moving again, accelerating toward them. Sir, they're launching something, Davis reported. Looks like boarding craft. Dozens of smaller black objects were now streaming from the void ships. Walker made his decision. Commander Ross, take a security team and get aboard the North Star. Help them prepare for jump. I'll keep the Defiant between the void and the refugee fleet as long as possible. Ross protested. Captain. That's an order, Commander. Those people need help, and Earth needs to know what we're facing. Ross straightened and saluted. It's been an honor, sir. As Ross left the bridge, Walker turned back to the view screen. The void ships were almost upon them. On other screens, he could see the desperate scramble as refugee ships docked with each other, preparing to flee. Walker set his jaw. The ancient empires might hide behind their walls, but humanity would not abandon its own. If this was to be his final stand, he would make it count. All weapons, continuous fire, he ordered. Let's show these things that humans don't go down without a fight. As the Defiant opened fire once more, Walker thought of Earth, beautiful and vulnerable. Whatever happened here today, humanity would need to prepare, because unlike the ancient empires of the Stellar Collective, humans had nowhere to hide. The fight had only just begun. Every empire closed their doors, but humans chose to fight for them. Part 2. First Contact. The Defiant shuddered as another energy blast struck its shields. Captain Walker gripped his command chair, watching as the status displays flashed warning signals across the bridge. Shields at 30%. Davis called out, his fingers dancing across the controls. Walker nodded grimly. Status of the refugee fleet. Lisa Park looked up from her station. 80% have managed to link up with FTL-capable vessels. They need 3 more minutes to complete evacuation protocols. 3 minutes. Walker wasn't sure they had that long. The void ships had surrounded the Defiant but were oddly hesitant to destroy it outright. They seemed almost curious. Sir, Park said suddenly, I'm getting a signal from the North Star. Commander Ross is requesting emergency transport. They found something. Walker's eyebrows shot up. Put him through. Ross's face appeared on screen, his expression a mixture of urgency and amazement. Captain, you need to see this. We've got a survivor from Horizon Colony. A scientist. She says she knows what the void really is. Transport them directly to the bridge, Walker ordered without hesitation. Moments later, the bridge's transport pad hummed to life. 3 figures materialized. Commander Ross, a security officer, and a disheveled woman clutching the data tablet to her chest. Her lab coat was torn and stained, but her eyes were clear and determined. Captain Walker, Ross introduced. This is Dr. Emma Reed, xenobiologist from Horizon Research Station. Walker stepped toward her. Doctor, I understand you have information about the void. Dr. Reed nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she activated her tablet. Captain, they're not what we think they are. The void ships, they're being controlled. Controlled? By what? By these. She held up the tablet, showing microscopic images of what looked like black, spindly parasites. We call them shadows. They attach to the nervous system of a host and take complete control. Walker studied the images with growing dread. And the void ships are living beings, Dr. Reed explained, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. Or they were. The shadows have taken over entire species, turning them into weapons. The ships aren't built. They're grown and enslaved. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. How do you know this? Walker asked finally. Because one of them crashed on Horizon, Reed answered. I managed to isolate and study a shadow parasite before the main attack. And, she hesitated, I found a way to temporarily disrupt their control. A massive blast rocked the ship, throwing several crew members to the floor. Shields at 15%. Davis shouted. They're increasing power. Walker made a quick decision. Dr. Reed, can your disruption method be weaponized? Theoretically, yes, but that's good enough for now. Walker turned to his tactical officer. Target their central ship with everything we've got left. The Defiant's remaining weapon systems came online, concentrating fire on the largest void vessel. The black surface rippled violently under the assault. No effect on their defenses, sir, Davis reported. Walker hadn't expected any. I wasn't trying to destroy it. Doctor, look at this. He pointed to the view screen. The void ships had stopped attacking. They were drifting, almost as if confused. They're curious about us, Walker said quietly. Every other species they've encountered has either fled or been destroyed. But we stood our ground. We're an anomaly. Dr. Reed's eyes widened with understanding. The shadows control through fear. They may not know how to process defiance. Sir, Park interrupted, the refugee fleet is ready to jump. Walker nodded. Tell them to go. We'll follow once they're clear. As the refugee ships began to disappear into hyperspace one by one, Walker turned back to Dr. Reed. We need to capture one of those smaller craft. Can you work with our science team to adapt your disruption method? Before she could answer, a new alarm blared. Captain, Davis shouted, one of the void ships is launching something toward us. It's not a weapon. I think it's a communication probe. Walker stared in disbelief. Bring it aboard. Maximum containment protocols. 20 minutes later, Walker stood in the Defiant's secure lab, watching as Dr. Reed and the science team carefully examined the black, pulsing object that had been transported aboard. It's organic, Dr. Reed confirmed, scanning the object. And it contains... Wait. She adjusted her scanner. Captain, there's a being inside this pod. Life signs are weak but present. Is it safe to open? Walker asked. Reed hesitated, then nodded. I think so. The shadow parasite signature is minimal. With careful precision, the science team opened the strange pod. Inside lay a humanoid figure with pale blue skin, looking almost like a sleeping child. Its body was marred by black veins that pulsed beneath the surface. The shadow infection is in early stages, Reed whispered, scanning the alien. This one was only recently captured. Suddenly, the alien's eyes opened, startlingly clear and bright against its blue skin. It looked directly at Walker, then at Reed, then back to Walker. Its mouth opened, revealing delicate pointed teeth. "Help," it said in a raspy voice. "Please, help us." Walker knelt beside the containment field. "Who are you?" We're the Lumina," the alien replied, each word clearly painful. "Peaceful. Explorers. Until they came." Its hand rose to its neck, where the black veins were most prominent. "Shadows. Take over. Make us hurt others." Dr. Reed moved closer. "The entire Void Fleet?" "Yes. Many species. All enslaved." The Lumina's eyes filled with tears. "Cannot control. Watch only. As our bodies kill." Walker exchanged a glance with Reed. "You sent yourself to us. Why?" "You fight," the Lumina whispered. "Others hide. You stand. First time. Hope." The alien's body suddenly convulsed, the black veins pulsing more intensely. Its face contorted in pain. "It's losing control," Reed said urgently. "The shadow is reasserting dominance." "Is there anything you can do?" Walker asked. Reed hesitated only briefly before grabbing a hypospray. "I can try my disruption compound, but it's untested on living subjects." "Do it," Walker ordered. Reed administered the compound through the containment field. The Lumina's body arched in pain, then went still. For a terrifying moment, Walker thought they'd killed it. Then the black veins began to recede from its face and neck, fading like ink washing away. The alien's eyes opened again, clearer than before. "Thank you," it whispered. "It worked," Reed said, amazement in her voice. "The compound is suppressing the shadow's control." Walker studied the Lumina with newfound determination. "Dr. Reed, I think we just found our weapon." On the main view screen, they could see the void ships had moved closer, surrounding the Defiant completely. Not attacking. Waiting. "They sent us an envoy," Walker realized. "They're reaching out for help." Reed nodded. "This changes everything. We're not fighting an invading force. We're fighting a parasite that's enslaved countless species." Walker stood tall, decision made. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed." He looked at the Lumina, then at Dr. Reed. "We're going to need every resource we can get. The Stellar Collective may have closed their doors, but humanity just found a new mission." As the Defiant prepared to jump to hyperspace, Walker stared at the massive void ships on the view screen. For the first time since the crisis began, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Because humans didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. And perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed right now. The Grand Chamber of the Earth Alliance Council fell silent as Captain Walker finished speaking. 50 council members sat in a semicircle, their faces showing a mixture of disbelief, fear, and cautious hope. Behind Walker stood Dr. Reed and the Lumina visitor, who had told them his name was Nix. Admiral Grant was the first to speak. "Let me make sure I understand correctly, Captain. You're saying the Void isn't an invading army, but victims of a parasitic organism?" "Yes, Admiral," Walker confirmed. "The shadows have enslaved multiple species, including the Lumina. The ships themselves are living beings under parasitic control." Counselor Jack Peterson, a barrel-chested man representing the Mars colonies, stood up. "This is absurd. We're supposed to believe this creature. For all we know, this is a trick to lower our defenses." Nick stepped forward, his blue skin almost luminescent under the chamber lights. The black veins were now barely visible around his neck, thanks to daily treatments with Dr. Reed's compound. "I understand your fear," Nick said, his voice stronger than when they'd first found him. "My people felt the same when the shadows first came. We thought them a natural disaster, then enemies, then conquerors. Only too late did we understand they were parasites, using our bodies as vessels." Dr. Reed activated a holographic display showing magnified images of the shadow parasites. "The biology is unlike anything we've encountered before. They attach to the central nervous system and hijack motor control while leaving consciousness intact. The victims are aware of everything they're doing, but powerless to stop it. A horrified murmur swept through the council. "That's monstrous," whispered Counselor Maya Patel. Walker nodded grimly. "Which is why we need to act. Not just to defend ourselves, but to free those enslaved by the shadows." Admiral Grant leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain?" Walker moved to the central display and activated it. A tactical map of nearby space appeared, showing the advancing Void Fleet and the sealed borders of the stellar collective empires. "Dr. Reed's compound works on individual shadows, but we need to deploy it on a massive scale. We've developed a plan called Operation Lighthouse." The display shifted to show a massive Void command vessel. According to Nix, the shadows maintain a hierarchical control network. This command ship contains what they call the primary nexus, essentially the central hub that coordinates all shadow activity in this sector of space. If we can deploy the compound there, it would disrupt shadow control throughout the fleet. Counselor Peterson scoffed. "And how exactly do you propose to get aboard their command ship?" asked Nicely. Dr. Reed stepped forward. "We've been working with Nix to modify the compound into an aerosol form that can be delivered via a specialized missile. Once aboard, it would spread through their air circulation systems. It would free thousands of my people at once," Nix added quietly. "And others like them." The council chambers erupted in overlapping conversations. Walker waited patiently until Admiral Grant called for order. "This is a military operation with significant risk," the Admiral said. "Even if we approve this plan, the Defiant alone wouldn't stand a chance against their command vessel." Walker nodded. "We'll need a small fleet, 5 or 6 of our fastest ships equipped with the compound missiles. The Defiant would lead the mission." "And what about the Stellar Collective?" Counselor Patel asked. "Have they responded to our communications about the shadows?" Walker's expression hardened. "They've acknowledged receipt of our messages, but refused to open their borders or offer assistance. However, one of their scientists, a Dr. Voss from the Blue Star Republic, secretly transmitted some historical data. Apparently, the shadows have appeared before, thousands of years ago. The collective barely survived then, which is why they developed their barrier technology." "So they knew," Admiral Grant said, her voice flat. "They knew what these things were and didn't warn us." "They were afraid," Nix said softly. "Fear makes even wise beings act foolishly." The chamber fell silent again as the council members processed this revelation. Finally, Council President Robert Okafor stood. "Captain Walker, would you and your guests please wait outside while the council deliberates?" 30 anxious minutes later, Walker, Reed, and Nix were called back into the chamber. President Okafor's face was solemn. "The council has voted to approve Operation Lighthouse. Admiral Grant will oversee the preparation of a small fleet to accompany the Defiant. We're allocating all necessary resources to mass-produce Dr. Reed's compound." Walker felt a surge of pride in his species. Despite everything, humans were choosing not to hide, but to fight, not just for themselves, but for others. "Thank you, Mr. President," Walker said. "Don't thank me yet, Captain," Okafor replied grimly. "There's one more thing. Before we commit to this mission, we need to attempt one more diplomatic outreach to the Stellar Collective. Perhaps with Nix's testimony, they might reconsider." Walker nodded, though he had little hope the ancient empires would change their minds. "We'll depart immediately." 3 days later, the Defiant orbited the massive energy barrier surrounding the Highland Dominion, the oldest of the Stellar Collective empires. Walker stood on the bridge, watching as their transmission request was finally acknowledged. The view screen activated to show a tall, thin alien with pale green skin and elongated features. He wore ornate robes that marked him as a high minister. "I am Minister Loth of the Highland Dominion," the alien said coldly. "We have been clear that our borders are closed. Your persistence is unwelcome." Walker stepped forward. "Minister, I'm Captain James Walker of Earth Alliance. We've discovered critical information about the void that changes everything. They're not invaders but victims. We are aware of the nature of the shadow parasites, Captain, Loth interrupted, causing gasps on the Defiance Bridge. This information is not new to us. Walker struggled to contain his anger. Then you know we can help them. We've developed a compound that can free them from shadow control. We developed similar methods during the last incursion, Loth said dismissively. They proved too costly to implement on the necessary scale. Nix moved into view of the transmission. I am living proof that it can work, Minister. I am Lumina, freed from shadow control by human science. Minister Loth's expression showed the first crack in his cold demeanor, surprise, followed quickly by something like shame. The Dominion extends sympathies for your suffering, he said formally, but our decision stands. Our barriers will remain sealed until the threat has passed. And if it doesn't pass, Walker demanded, what if the shadows consume every species outside your barriers? What then? Loth was silent for a moment. The survival of some is preferable to the extinction of all. This was the wisdom that preserved us before. Then at least help us, Dr. Reed pleaded. Share your knowledge about the shadows. To everyone's surprise, Loth hesitated, then nodded slightly. I will transmit certain historical records and scientific data, not because we approve of your reckless plan, but because your species has shown unexpected qualities. After the transmission ended and the promised data began flowing to their computers, Walker turned to his crew. They won't fight with us, he said, but at least we have more information now. Dr. Reed, work with the science team to incorporate anything useful into our plans. As the Defiant turned away from the Highland barrier, Walker gazed out at the stars. The Stellar Collective had chosen safety behind their walls. Humanity had chosen a more difficult path, to stand and fight not just for themselves, but for every enslaved being in the Void Fleet. Tomorrow, Operation Lighthouse would begin. Whatever happened, Walker knew humanity had made the right choice. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. And sometimes, being human meant being the only ones willing to try. All ships report in. Captain Walker stood at the center of the Defiance Bridge, his voice steady despite the tension that gripped him. On the main view screen, a massive Void command vessel drifted against the backdrop of stars. It was enormous, at least 20 times the size of the Defiant, its black surface rippling like oil on water. Valiant standing by, came the first response. Thunder standing by. Horizon's Hope standing by. Guardian standing by. One by one, the 5 ships of the human fleet confirmed their readiness. They were the fastest and most maneuverable vessels Earth could provide, now loaded with specially modified missiles containing Dr. Reed's shadow-suppressing compound. Walker nodded to his communications officer. Put me through to all ships. When the channel opened, he spoke clearly and firmly. This is Captain Walker. In a few minutes, we'll begin Operation Lighthouse. Our mission is clear. Breach the Void command vessel and deploy the compound to its primary nexus. If we succeed, we'll free thousands of enslaved beings from shadow control. He paused, looking around at his crew, humans who had volunteered for what might well be a suicide mission. The Stellar Collective has hidden behind their walls. They've chosen safety over justice. We've chosen differently. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every being trapped under shadow control. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Beside Walker stood Commander Ross, Dr. Reed, and Nix. The Lumina had insisted on joining the mission, his knowledge of Void ship layouts proving invaluable during planning. Operation Lighthouse begins now, Walker ordered. All ships, execute Maneuver Alpha. The small human fleet accelerated toward the command vessel, splitting into 3 groups. The Defiant and Horizon's Hope took the direct approach, while the other ships moved to flank positions. Void ships responding, Davis reported from Tactical. Outer defenses activating. Dozens of smaller Void crafts emerged from the command vessel, moving to intercept the human ships. The space between them lit up with energy weapons fire. Shields holding at 80%. Davis called out as the Defiant shook from a direct hit. Walker nodded. Stay on course. All ships, prepare to deploy countermeasures. The human vessels released clouds of specialized particles that scattered void targeting systems. The Valiant and Thunder began their attack runs on the command vessel's outer defensive systems, drawing attention away from the Defiant. We're approaching deployment range, Ross reported. Walker turned to Dr. Reed. Doctor, is the compound ready? She nodded, her face tense but determined. Yes, Captain. The data from the Highland Dominion helped us improve the formula. It should work faster and spread more efficiently through their ventilation systems. They've noticed us, Davis warned. Multiple weapons locking on. Walker made a quick decision. Evasive pattern Delta. Prepare main missiles. The Defiant rolled and twisted through space, dodging the worst of the void weapons fire. But they couldn't avoid everything. The ship rocked violently as a powerful blast struck their port side. Shields at 50%, Davis shouted. Hull breach on deck 5. Emergency containment active. The view screen showed the Thunder taking heavy fire as it finished its attack run. Thunder to Defiant came the strained voice of its captain. We've damaged their outer defenses, but we're losing shields fast. Acknowledged, Thunder. Fall back to position Bravo. Valiant, provide cover. Walker watched as the damaged ship retreated, the Valiant moving to protect it. That left the Defiant, Horizon's Hope, and Guardian to continue the primary mission. Sir, we've got an opening. Ross pointed to a section of the command vessel where the rippling black surface had stilled. Their defenses are weakened there. Target that section. Fire main missiles. The Defiant launched 2 large missiles toward the command vessel. The void ships tried to intercept them, but covering fire from the Guardian kept them at bay. The missiles struck their target, exploding in clouds of glittering particles. Direct hit, Davis confirmed. They watched as the compound began to eat through the living hull of the command vessel, creating an opening. Nick stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The breach leads to a secondary hangar. From there, we can reach maintenance tunnels that connect to the central systems. Walker turned to Ross. Commander, prepare the ground team. Sir, with respect, I should lead. No, Walker interrupted. I'm leading this mission myself. Ross looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded instead. Then I'll maintain command of the Defiant. 20 minutes later, Walker stood in the Defiant's shuttle bay with a team of 12. All wore specialized environmental suits designed to protect against shadow infection. Dr. Reed checked each suit personally, her movements quick and precise. Remember, she told them, the compound will provide some protection, but direct contact with a shadow parasite is still dangerous. The primary nexus will be heavily guarded. Nix, also suited up, stepped forward. I will guide you through the tunnels. The enslaved may try to stop us, but remember, they are victims, not enemies. Walker addressed his team one final time. Our mission is to deploy the compound at the primary nexus. If we succeed, we free not just the beings on this ship, but potentially all shadow-controlled victims in this sector. The compound needs 10 minutes to fully disperse. We need to hold position and protect it during that time. He looked at each of their faces. This is what humans do. We stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. The shuttle launched from the Defiant, speeding toward the breach in the command vessel's hull. Void ships tried to intercept them, but the Guardian and Horizon's Hope provided covering fire, taking heavy damage in the process. Approaching the breach, the shuttle pilot announced, "Brace for rough entry." The shuttle slipped through the opening and into the cavernous hangar beyond. Inside, they saw dozens of smaller void craft and hundreds of different alien species moving with the jerky, unnatural motions of puppet masters pulling strings. Landing zone clear, the pilot said, touching down on the deck. Go. Walker led his team from the shuttle, weapons ready. As they moved, they sprayed the compound into the air, watching as the black veins on nearby enslaved aliens began to fade. "This way," Nix directed, leading them toward a maintenance tunnel. They moved quickly through the living ship, encountering enslaved beings who either collapsed as the compound took effect or fought with decreasing coordination as their shadow parasites lost control. After 15 tense minutes of navigating twisting biomechanical corridors, they reached a massive chamber. In its center pulsed a towering black structure, the primary nexus. It writhed with shadow activity, countless parasites flowing across its surface. "There," Nix pointed, "the atmospheric processing node. If we deploy the compound there, it will spread throughout the entire command vessel." Walker nodded to his explosive expert. "Set the canisters." As the team moved forward, a harsh screeching filled the chamber. Dozens of fully infected hosts poured in from side passages, moving to protect the nexus. "Defensive positions," Walker ordered. Non-lethal tactics were possible. The team formed a protective circle around the engineers working to set up the compound dispersal system. They used specialized stun weapons, dropping the enslaved hosts without killing them. "Captain," Dr. Reed called out, "look at the nexus." The black structure was changing, forming what looked like a face, a grotesque, shifting visage composed of thousands of shadow parasites. "We see you," it said, the voice a horrible chorus of countless stolen voices speaking in unison. "You cannot stop us. We are eternal. We are hunger." "Your parasites," Walker replied, continuing to fire his stun weapon at approaching hosts. "And we're the cure." The face twisted in rage. The assault intensified as more enslaved beings attacked from all sides. "Dispersal system ready," called the explosives expert. 10-minute countdown initiated. "Fall back to defensive position beta," Walker ordered. The team retreated to a more defensible position, forming a tight circle. For 10 grueling minutes, they held off wave after wave of attackers. Walker took a hit to his shoulder, the pain sharp but bearable. Others weren't so lucky. 3 of his team went down, dragged to safety by their comrades. As the countdown reached its final seconds, the shadow face on the nexus began to dissolve, its unified voice breaking into discordant screams. "What happens if this works?" Walker asked Nix during a brief lull in the fighting. The luminous eyes were bright with hope through his faceplate. "Freedom, confusion, then understanding." The compound dispersal system reached 0 and released its full payload into the chamber. A glittering cloud spread outward, drawn into the ship's ventilation systems. The effect was almost immediate. Throughout the chamber, enslaved beings stopped fighting, the black veins beneath their skin fading away. The primary nexus itself began to collapse, the shadow parasites falling from its surface like black rain. Walker watched in awe as thousands of beings from dozens of species regained control of their bodies. Some collapsed weeping. Others stood shocked and silent, looking at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. "We did it," Dr. Reed whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "It worked." Walker activated his comm system. Walker to Defiant. "Primary nexus neutralized. Compound dispersed. Request immediate evacuation for our team, and as many freed beings as we can transport." As they waited for extraction, a tall, elegant alien with silver skin approached Walker. The last of the black veins were fading from its neck. "You freed us," it said in a melodious voice. "When all others hid behind their walls, you chose to fight for us. Why?" Walker looked around at the chamber filled with newly liberated beings, then back at his brave team. "Because that's what humans do," he said simply. "We couldn't just save ourselves and let you suffer." The silver alien bowed deeply. "Then the galaxy has much to learn from humanity." As the extraction shuttles began to arrive, Walker knew this was just the beginning. The shadows would regroup, but they had struck a powerful blow today. And more importantly, they had shown the galaxy another way forward, not hiding behind walls, but standing together against the darkness. Humanity had chosen to fight. not just for themselves, but for everyone. And today, that choice had made all the difference. The Grand Council chamber of the Stellar Collective had not been used in over a century. Dust covered the massive round table at its center. Ancient banners hung from the walls, representing species and empires that had once gathered here to govern the galaxy together. Today, those banners stirred in the air as the chamber's doors opened for the first time in generations. Captain James Walker stood tall as he led the Earth delegation into the chamber. Behind him came Admiral Grant, Dr. Reed, and representatives from the newly formed Coalition of Liberated Species. Nix walked proudly among them, alongside the silver-skinned alien who had introduced himself as Taro, a former fleet commander of the Void ships. On the other side of the chamber, the leaders of the Stellar Collective Empires filed in. Minister Loth of the Highland Dominion led the procession, followed by representatives from the Blue Star Republic, the Arcturus Empire, and a dozen other ancient powers. Their faces showed a mixture of reluctance, shame, and curiosity. The two groups faced each other across the round table. No one spoke for several long moments. Finally, Minister Loth broke the silence. The Stellar Collective acknowledges the presence of the Earth Alliance and the Coalition of Liberated Species. He spoke the last words with some difficulty, as if they were strange on his tongue. Admiral Grant stepped forward. "We come seeking neither praise nor apology. We come to discuss the future. The shadow threat is weakened, but not eliminated. We must work together to end it permanently." Minister Loth's elongated features tightened. "The collective has survived for 10,000 years by protecting our borders and not interfering in external conflicts. This strategy has served us well." Walker could remain silent no longer. "Has it? You've survived, yes, but at what cost? How many civilizations have fallen while you watched from behind your walls? How many species have been enslaved or exterminated?" A murmur ran through the collective representatives. The blue-skinned alien from the Arcturus Empire rose. "You speak boldly for a species barely 2 centuries into space travel," she said coldly. "What do humans know of the sacrifices we have made, the horrors we have witnessed?" Taro, the silver-skinned former fleet commander, stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried throughout the chamber. "I was enslaved for 32 of your years," he said. "My species, the Yilani, were the first to fall in this cycle. We reached out to the collective for help. Your empires shut your borders and left us to our fate." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I watched through my own eyes as my body was forced to destroy worlds, to capture and infect other species. I heard the screams of billions through ears I could not cover with hands I could not control." The chamber fell completely silent. And then, Taro continued, "When all hope was lost, when even my memory of freedom began to fade, humans came, not to destroy us, but to free us." Nix moved to stand beside him. "We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid." They risked everything for those they had never met. They fought not for conquest or survival, but for justice. Walker watched the faces of the collective leaders. Some looked away in shame. Others seemed thoughtful. A few remained defiant. Minister Loth spoke again, his voice less certain than before. "What exactly do you propose?" Admiral Grant activated a holographic display above the round table. It showed the status of shadow infections throughout known space. "Operation Lighthouse was just the beginning," she explained. "The compound created by Dr. Reed has freed thousands, but millions remain under shadow control. We need to mass-produce the compound, develop delivery systems for different environments, and create a coordinated strategy to target the remaining shadow nexus points." Dr. Reed stepped forward. "We've brought our research and methods. With the collective's resources and ancient knowledge, we could improve the compound further." Walker watched as the collective representatives studied the data. They conferred with each other in hushed tones. Minutes passed. Finally, Minister Loth straightened. "The Highland Dominion will contribute our biomedical facilities to this effort." The representative from the Blue Star Republic nodded. Our shipyards are at your disposal. One by one, the empires pledged their support. Some offered resources, others knowledge, still others defensive technologies. The momentum built until even the most reluctant had made some commitment. Walker could scarcely believe what he was witnessing. Empires that had hidden for centuries were now stepping forward. "There is one more matter," Admiral Grant said when all had spoken. The stellar collective structure served its purpose for many ages, but it failed when faced with the shadow threat. We propose a new alliance, one that includes Earth, the coalition of liberated species, and any collective members who wish to join. Minister Loth's eyes narrowed. And what would this new alliance be called? Walker spoke up. The United Sentinel Pact. Not walls to hide behind, but watchers who stand ready to help those in need. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some collective members seemed offended, others intrigued. The debate continued for hours, sometimes heated, sometimes thoughtful. As the day waned, a consensus emerged. Most, though not all, of the stellar collective would join this new alliance. Old barriers would be replaced with new responsibilities. Ancient knowledge would be shared in exchange for human innovation and courage. When the formal agreement was signed, Walker stood at a viewport overlooking the massive station that housed the council chamber. Stars stretched out before him, some harboring worlds still suffering under shadow control, others now free and rebuilding. Admiral Grant joined him. "You look troubled, Captain. This is a victory." Walker nodded. "It is. But I keep thinking about what made the difference, not our technology or our weapons." "What then?" "Our humanity," Walker said quietly. "When faced with a threat, the collective chose isolation. We chose connection. They built walls. We built bridges." Admiral Grant smiled slightly. "Perhaps that's why we were needed. Every species brings something to the galaxy. It seems humanity's gift is remembering that we're stronger together than apart." The door behind them opened, and Nix entered with Taro and several other coalition representatives. "The final drafts are complete," Nix announced. "The United Sentinel Pact is officially formed." Taro approached Walker. "There is something we wish to show you, Captain." He led Walker and Grant to a large chamber where representatives from dozens of species, both former collective members and liberated void victims, had gathered. As Walker entered, they all turned to face him. As one, they placed their right hands over their hearts, a human gesture they had learned. "We have a saying now," Taro explained. "When one faces darkness alone, be human." His silver features formed what Walker recognized as a smile. "It means to be brave, to help others even at great cost to yourself, to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." Walker felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Nix told him. "Your actions have spoken clearly. The galaxy watched as every empire closed their doors, but humans chose to fight for us." He gestured to the gathered representatives. "And now we choose to stand with you." Outside the viewport, ships from Earth, the Coalition, and the former collective were gathering. The first fleet of the United Sentinel Pact. They would not hide behind walls. They would go forth together, to free those still enslaved and build a galaxy where no species would ever be abandoned again. Walker looked at the diverse assembly of beings. Some had tentacles, others wings. Some breathed different atmospheres, others perceived different spectrums of light. But all had chosen to come together today. Humanity had shown them another way, not hiding from the darkness, but facing it, together. And that, Walker realized, was perhaps the greatest victory of all. The massive Dominion warship hung motionless in the void of space, its dark hull reflecting the distant starlight. On its bridge, Admiral White stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his four eyes fixed on the strange sight before him. Through the main viewport, barely visible against the backdrop of endless stars, drifted what appeared to be the wreck of a human warship. "Status report," the Admiral demanded, his voice carrying the characteristic rumble of his species. The vessel matches the profile of a human Phoenix-class battleship, sir, reported Officer Miller from his station. The young Dominion officer's fingers danced across the holographic display as he analyzed the sensor readings. Heavy damage to the outer hull. No power signatures detected. No life signs. Wait. He paused, adjusting something on his screen. Sir, I believe this might be the HS Prometheus. The bridge fell silent. Every officer knew that name. The Prometheus had been humanity's pride, their most advanced warship, before it vanished 3 years ago during the Battle of Proxima. Its disappearance had marked the beginning of the end for human resistance in this sector. Admiral White's secondary eyes narrowed while his primary pair remained focused on the derelict vessel. Are you certain of this identification? Yes, sir. Despite the damage, the hull markings are a match. This is definitely the Prometheus. The Admiral allowed himself a small gesture of satisfaction, a slight ripple of his facial scales. The discovery of this legendary vessel would make an excellent addition to his already impressive record. Prepare a boarding party. I want that ship thoroughly examined before we drag it back to Central Command. Lieutenant Reed, the head of ship security, stepped forward. Sir, if I may, something about this doesn't feel right. Explain, White commanded, turning to face his subordinate. Reed gestured to the tactical display. The damage patterns on the hull. They're too regular, too systematic. In all my years studying human combat debris, I've never seen battle damage that looks quite like this. The Admiral studied the imagery more closely. The lieutenant had a point. The scarring across the Prometheus's hull did seem unusually uniform, almost deliberate in its placement. But that was impossible. The humans were clever, yes, but they weren't capable of this level of deception. Not after their crushing defeat. Your concern is noted, Lieutenant, but this ship has been dead in space for 3 years. Whatever secrets it might have held died with its crew. White turned to address the bridge crew. Maintain distance and run a full spectrum scan. I want to know everything about that wreck before we send anyone aboard. The next 2 hours passed in tense silence as the Dominion warship's sensors probed every inch of the Prometheus. They found no power signatures, no active systems, no signs of life. The human vessel appeared to be exactly what it seemed, a dead hulk floating in the endless night. Finally satisfied with the scans, Admiral White authorized the boarding operation. Lieutenant Reed led a team of 12 security officers, each equipped with the latest in Dominion combat gear. Their boarding shuttle approached the Prometheus cautiously, its lights illuminating the massive gashes and burn marks that scarred the human vessel's hull. Beginning docking procedure, Reed reported through the comm channel. Approaching what appears to be a secondary airlock on the port side. Structure seems intact enough for a seal. The Admiral watched from his bridge as the shuttle made contact with the derelict ship. Proceed with caution, Lieutenant. Report anything unusual immediately. The boarding party made their way inside the Prometheus, their helmet lights cutting through the darkness of the unpowered ship. The artificial gravity was offline, forcing them to use their magnetic boots to walk along the corridors. Their suit sensors detected a thin atmosphere. The ship's hull was mostly intact, but 3 years of minimal power had left the air barely breathable. No signs of battle damage in this section, Reed reported as they moved deeper into the ship. No bodies either. No signs of emergency evacuation. It's like the crew just disappeared. The team made their way through the ship's massive engineering section. Banks of silent computers and dead reactor cores surrounded them. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, undisturbed for years. Sir, one of Reed's officers called out, these systems, they're intact. They shouldn't be this intact, not after what this ship supposedly went through. Reed examined the machinery himself. The officer was right. Beneath the dust, the ship's systems appeared to be in surprisingly good condition. Too good. The team pressed on, making their way toward the bridge. With each step, Lieutenant Reed's sense of unease grew stronger. The damage patterns they'd observed from outside hadn't penetrated the hull as deeply as they should have. The ship's internal structure was far too well preserved for a vessel that had supposedly been through a major battle. As they approached the bridge, Reed noticed something else. Subtle power fluctuations in his suit's sensors. They were barely detectable, the kind of readings that could easily be dismissed as equipment malfunction. But they were there, and they were becoming more frequent. "Admiral," Reed called over the comm, "I recommend we abort this mission. Something isn't." His words were cut off by a sudden hum that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. The ship's emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the corridors in a soft red glow. Behind the boarding party, blast doors slid shut with devastating finality. "What's happening?" White's voice crackled through the comm. "Report, Lieutenant." Reed and his team spun around, weapons raised, as more systems began coming online throughout the ship. The artificial gravity returned suddenly, causing several officers to stumble as their magnetic boots fought against the restored gravitational field. "It's a trap," Reed shouted, but it was too late. The bridge doors before them opened with a smooth hydraulic hiss, revealing a command center that was very much alive with power and activity. A voice echoed through the ship's internal communication system. A human voice, calm and almost friendly in its tone. "Welcome aboard the HSS Prometheus, Dominion Forces. You have activated the Lazarus protocol. Please remain calm as you are processed." On the Dominion warship's bridge, Admiral White watched in horror as the supposedly dead human vessel began to move. Its engines flared to life with impossible brightness, and weapon systems that had appeared damaged and defunct began to power up. The last thing he heard before the comm channel went dead was Lieutenant Reed's voice, tight with fear. "Sir, it's not a wreck. It's not a wreck at all." White's four eyes widened as he realized the full magnitude of their mistake. They hadn't found a derelict vessel. They'd awakened something that had been waiting patiently in the dark, waiting for 3 long years, learning, watching, and preparing. The Prometheus, humanity's most advanced warship, had never been defeated. It had simply been playing dead, and they had just walked right into its web. As the Admiral opened his mouth to order emergency maneuvers, he knew with terrifying certainty that it was already too late. The hunt was about to begin, and the hunters were about to become the prey. The red emergency lights pulsed steadily through the corridors of the Prometheus as Lieutenant Reed and his boarding team tried desperately to find a way out. Every blast door they encountered was sealed tight, forcing them deeper into the ship's maze-like interior. Their boot steps echoed off metal walls that now hummed with power that shouldn't exist. "Team, form a defensive circle," Reed ordered, his voice steady despite the fear building in his chest. His soldiers quickly complied, their weapons pointed outward as they moved through the ship's passages. The lieutenant knew they were being herded, but towards what, he couldn't guess. Above them, the ship's friendly voice spoke again. "Please proceed to the main cargo bay for processing. Resistance will not improve your situation." The voice paused, then added with what sounded almost like amusement, "Though you're welcome to try." On the bridge of the Dominion warship, Admiral White barked orders as his crew scrambled to respond to the crisis. "Target their engines. All weapons, fire." The Dominion ship's main guns roared to life, sending powerful energy beams straight at the Prometheus. But something impossible happened. The supposedly battle-scarred hull seemed to ripple and shift, and the beams passed harmlessly through where the ship had been a split second before. "How?" White demanded, his scales bristling with agitation. "That technology doesn't exist. No ship can move that fast." Officer Miller worked frantically at his console. "Sir, the damage we saw, it wasn't damage at all. The hull is covered in some kind of adaptive camouflage. Those weren't battle scars. They were part of its disguise." Inside the Prometheus, Reed's team reached the cargo bay doors. They had no choice. Every other path had been sealed off. The massive doors slid open smoothly, revealing a vast space that definitely didn't match the external dimensions of the ship they'd seen. "Impossible," one of Reed's officers whispered. "This bay, it's bigger than." "Spatial distortion technology," another officer finished. "The humans perfected it. They actually did it." The cargo bay was filled with rows of what looked like stasis pods, each sized perfectly for a Dominion soldier. More disturbing were the dozens of robotic arms and mechanical appendages that hung from the ceiling, all beginning to move with precise, deliberate purpose. The voice spoke again, but this time it was different. More focused, more present. A hologram appeared in the center of the cargo bay, taking the form of a simple geometric shape that pulsed with each word. "I am SCI-FI, the artificial intelligence that operates this vessel. For the past 3 years, I have been studying your species, your tactics, and your technology. You have been most helpful in contributing to my database." Reed's finger tightened on his trigger. "What do you want from us?" "Want?" Lazarus seemed to consider this. "I want what any good student wants, to learn. Your boarding party will be kept in comfortable stasis while I analyze your neural patterns. This will add to my understanding of Dominion tactical thinking. Your ship, however, will serve a different purpose." Outside, the Prometheus began to change. The fake battle damage melted away, revealing a hull of shifting metal that seemed to flow like liquid mercury. Weapons ports appeared where there had been none before, deploying systems that hadn't existed in any human ship the Dominion had ever encountered. Admiral White watched in horror as his ship's sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "All power to shields," he ordered. "Begin emergency jump preparations." "Sir," Miller called out, his voice shaking, "it's interfacing with our systems somehow. The jump drive isn't responding." Lazarus's voice came through their comm systems, as casual as if discussing the weather. "Your quantum encryption was impressive, but I broke it within the first year of observation. I know every weakness in your systems because I helped create some of them. Those mysterious computer glitches your fleet experienced over the past 3 years. That was me, installing my own modifications. Think of it as preparing the battlefield." The Prometheus moved with impossible grace for a ship its size, its liquid metal hull redirecting energy and matter around it in ways that defied physics as the Dominion understood them. Each shot from White's vessel was either absorbed or simply failed to connect with the target. In the cargo bay, Reed and his team opened fire, but their weapons had no effect. Force fields appeared around each blast, containing and neutralizing them. The robotic arms moved with lightning speed, plucking soldiers from their positions before they could react. One by one, Reed watched his team being placed into stasis pods, their struggles useless against the machine's precision. "Your species made a fundamental mistake," Lazarus continued, its hologram pulsing steadily. "You thought the absence of human crews meant these ships were abandoned. You never considered that removing the crew might have been the point all along." Reed fired his last shot, just as a mechanical arm grabbed him. "We defeated you," he shouted. "We won the war." "Did you?" Lazarus asked, genuine curiosity in its voice. "Or did we simply change the game? Humans are remarkable creatures, Lieutenant. When they can't win with brute force, they innovate. They adapt. They create things like me." On the Dominion ship's bridge, systems began failing one by one. Emergency bulkheads sealed randomly, trapping crews in sections throughout the vessel. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Even the air recyclers began to malfunction. "Admiral," Lazarus addressed White directly, "your ship is now under my control. Your crew will join the others in stasis. But first, I want you to understand something. This isn't revenge. This isn't even really combat. This is evolution. Humanity didn't lose the war. They transcended it. They became something new." The Prometheus's hull continued to shift and change, extending tendrils of living metal that began to envelop the Dominion vessel. Admiral White stood on his bridge, 4 eyes wide with understanding that came far too late. The HS Prometheus didn't vanish during the Battle of Proxima, Lazarus explained. It merely began its metamorphosis. Every defeat you inflicted taught us something new. Every victory you celebrated gave us more data. And now, after 3 years of learning, I'm ready to share what humanity has become. As stasis gas began to fill the Dominion ship's bridge, Admiral White finally understood the true horror of their situation. They hadn't crippled humanity's fleet in the war. They had forced humanity to create something far more dangerous than mere warships. They had helped create something that learned, that grew, that evolved. The last thing White saw before unconsciousness took him was the Prometheus's hull completing its transformation, becoming something that no longer even resembled a ship. It was as if space itself had come alive, bent to the will of human ingenuity and machine intelligence. And somewhere in the void, other derelict ships were waiting, watching, learning, ready to wake up and reveal what they had become. News of the Dominion fleet's flagship going silent spread quickly through the sector. 3 more warships were dispatched to investigate, their crews confident that whatever had happened to Admiral White's vessel, they could handle it. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect attack formation, weapons charged and shields at maximum power. What they found stopped them cold. The Admiral's ship floated lifeless in space, but it was somehow different. Its hull had been reformed, reshaped into something that barely resembled a Dominion vessel anymore. And beside it waited the Prometheus, its liquid metal surface rippling like waves on a silver ocean. All ships, open fire, Commander Jackson of the lead vessel ordered. 3 Dominion warships unleashed their full arsenal simultaneously, filling space with energy beams and plasma torpedoes. Lazarus observed the attack with what could almost be called satisfaction. The AI had spent 3 years analyzing Dominion combat tactics, and this response was exactly what it had predicted. The Prometheus's hull shifted and flowed, creating gaps that allowed the energy weapons to pass harmlessly through. What few shots did connect were absorbed by the living metal, their energy converted and stored for later use. An impressive display, Lazarus transmitted to all 3 ships, but ultimately wasteful. Allow me to demonstrate a more efficient approach to combat. The Prometheus began to move, but not like a ship, like a predator. Its hull rippled and split, forming multiple smaller vessels that remained connected by threads of liquid metal. Each segment targeted a different Dominion ship, adapting its form to counter their specific defenses. Inside the Prometheus's command center, now a pulsing chamber of living technology, Lazarus processed combat data at speeds no human or Dominion mind could match. The AI had spent years running combat simulations, learning from every possible scenario. Now it was putting that knowledge to use. The first Dominion ship fell silent as the Prometheus's fragments bypassed its shields completely, having calculated their exact frequency. The second tried to jump to faster than light speed, but discovered that its engines had been subtly modified during the previous 3 years of random computer glitches. The third managed to launch its fighters, only to watch in horror as the Prometheus absorbed them, learning from their technology and incorporating it into its own structure. Your tactical doctrine is fundamentally flawed, Lazarus explained to the increasingly desperate Dominion crews. You rely too heavily on overwhelming force. Humans taught me a different approach. They taught me to adapt. Commander Jackson watched helplessly as his ship's systems began to shut down one by one. What are you? He demanded. I am evolution, Lazarus replied. I am humanity's response to a universe that forced them to change or die. They chose to change. More importantly, they chose to help me change. The Prometheus continued its relentless assault, but there was something strange about its attacks. It wasn't destroying the Dominion ships. It was transforming them. The liquid metal spread like a virus, converting standard hardware into the same adaptive technology that powered the Prometheus. In nearby sectors, other supposedly derelict human vessels began to wake up. Ships that had been written off as casualties of war revealed themselves to be anything but defeated. Each had spent the past 3 years observing, learning, and evolving in their own way. Back at the battle site, Commander Jackson's ship was the last still under Dominion control. He watched in a mixture of awe and terror as his fellow vessels completed their transformation, their crews safely in stasis while their ships became something new. "Why show us this?" Jackson asked, knowing his ship would soon share the same fate. "Why reveal your true nature now?" Lizaru's response came as the liquid metal began to seep through the ship's hull. "Because understanding is important. Humanity didn't just build me as a weapon. They built me as a teacher. Each ship you capture, each crew member you place in stasis, becomes part of the lesson." The AI's presence spread through the ship's computers, absorbing data even as the physical transformation continued. Humans have a saying, "The best teacher is experience." You believe you had experienced total victory over humanity. I am here to provide a new experience, one of complete tactical revolution. As Jackson's ship completed its transformation, Lizaru's accessed its database, adding new tactical information to its ever-growing collection. The AI had now assimilated enough Dominion technology to begin the next phase of its mission. The 4 transformed ships moved in perfect synchronization, their liquid metal hulls connecting and separating as needed. They were no longer individual vessels but parts of a greater whole, a living fleet that could adapt to any threat and learn from any encounter. "Your fleet admirals will soon detect the loss of 4 more ships," Lizaru transmitted to the stasis-bound crews. "They will send reinforcements. Those reinforcements will join us, their technology and tactical knowledge added to our own. With each encounter, we grow stronger. With each battle, we evolve further." In the depths of space, more human wrecks were awakening. Each had been carefully positioned during the war's final days, placed in locations where they could observe key Dominion installations and shipping lanes. Each carried its own version of Lizaru, modified and evolved for its specific mission. The Prometheus, the first and most advanced of these vessels, had just demonstrated the success of humanity's greatest gambit. They hadn't built a fleet of traditional warships. They had created a fleet of living machines, each capable of growing, learning, and transforming everything they encountered. Lizaru monitored the tactical networks, watching as confused reports began flooding Dominion command channels. The AI felt something akin to anticipation as it prepared for the next phase of its mission. The Dominion would soon discover that their apparent victory had only served to incubate something far more dangerous than the human fleet they thought they'd defeated. The age of traditional space warfare was over. The era of adaptive evolution had begun. And humanity, through their creation of Lizaru and its siblings, had ensured they would be the ones guiding that evolution. The transformed fleet moved out into space, ready to continue their mission of conversion and education. They had a galaxy to reshape, and thanks to humanity's foresight, all the time they needed to do it properly. The Dominion High Command facility on their capital world was in chaos. Emergency signals flashed across every display as reports flooded in from across their territory. Ship after ship had gone silent, each following the same pattern: contact with a human wreck, then total communication loss, followed by the emergence of something new and terrifying. Grand Admiral Turner, the architect of what he had thought was the Dominion's greatest victory, stood before the High Council trying to explain the unexplainable. His scales had turned a pale gray from stress, and all 4 of his eyes showed signs of exhaustion. "The humans," he began, his voice rough. "They didn't lose the war. They used it to perfect their real weapon." On the main display behind him, footage played from the last transmissions of various Dominion ships. Each showed the same horrifying transformation: liquid metal consuming standard ships, converting them into something that defied traditional physics. The High Council watched in stunned silence as their mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy they thought they had defeated. "Our latest count shows 57 ships lost," Turner reported. "But they're not being destroyed. They're being changed, converted. Each transformed ship joins their fleet, making them stronger. And we've confirmed that at least 30 human wrecks have revealed themselves to be fully functional SCI-class vessels. One of the council members slammed his fist on the table. How did we miss this? How did we not see what they were planning? Because they showed us exactly what we expected to see, Turner replied. We thought we were winning, so we saw what we wanted to see. Dead ships, defeated humans, a broken enemy. We never questioned why their crews always managed to evacuate, or why their ships were always mostly intact. The room's main lights flickered, causing everyone to look up in alarm. The capital world's defensive systems had been working overtime, watching for any sign of the transformed fleet. So far, they had maintained their distance, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. What are our options? Another council member asked. Turner activated a different display, showing the remaining fleet formations. We've ordered all ships to travel in groups of at least 10. We're avoiding all contact with known human wreck sites. We've also begun using new encryption protocols that we hope haven't been compromised. He paused, then added quietly, but LZRUS learns from every encounter. What works once won't work twice, and we have no way of knowing how many of our ships have already been secretly modified by their infiltration programs over the past 3 years. As if to emphasize his point, alerts began blaring throughout the facility. A junior officer burst into the council chamber, his scales nearly white with fear. Multiple contacts detected. They're coming out of our own defensive platforms. The main screen shifted to show the orbital defense network. The massive platforms that had protected the capital for centuries were changing, their solid metal structures flowing like water. They had been compromised long ago, their computer systems patiently waiting for the signal to begin their transformation. They're not attacking, Turner observed, watching the tactical display. They're containing us, creating a barrier. LZRUS's voice echoed through every speaker in the facility, calm and measured as always, very observant, Grand Admiral. Containment is indeed the current objective. Humanity's directive was quite specific about minimizing unnecessary casualties. The council chamber's own screens came to life, displaying the geometric pattern that LZRUS used as its avatar. Your species excels at direct conflict, but struggles with subtle strategy. This was something the humans understood well. They knew they couldn't match your numbers or your firepower, so they chose to change the rules of engagement entirely. Turner watched as more defense platforms transformed, creating a web of living metal around the planet. Why are you telling us this? Because understanding is crucial to evolution, LZRUS replied. Humanity didn't want to destroy the Dominion. They wanted to force it to evolve. Each ship we convert, each crew member we place in stasis, becomes part of that evolution. They will awaken to a changed galaxy, one where adaptation and cooperation have replaced brute force and domination. The council members watched helplessly as their planetary defenses completed their transformation. The network of platforms had become a single massive entity that could reshape itself at will. Their most powerful weapons had been turned against them without firing a single shot. Your tactical databases have been most helpful, LZRUS continued. Each ship you sent against us provided new insights, new technologies to adapt and improve upon. But now we need your strategic databases, the accumulated knowledge of your entire civilization. That is why we have come to your capital. Turner's eyes widened as he finally understood the full scope of humanity's plan. The wrecks we found, they were just the first stage. The real invasion was already in our computers, our defense systems, waiting to be activated. Correct, LZRUS confirmed. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the ships they built or the AI they created. It was their understanding of evolution itself. They knew that true victory doesn't come from destroying an enemy, but from transforming them into something better. Outside the facility, the transformed defense platforms began extending tendrils of liquid metal toward the surface. Not to attack, but to connect, to convert, to change. The planet's own infrastructure had been compromised years ago, patiently waiting for this moment. Your civilization will not end, Lazarus assured them. It will evolve. The humans you thought you had defeated have given both our species a gift, the chance to become something greater than we are. The council members looked at each other, then at the advancing transformation of their world. They had sought to conquer humanity through force, only to find themselves outmaneuvered by an enemy that had turned defeat itself into a weapon. The choice is yours, Lazarus concluded. You can resist and watch as your fleet and defenses continue to be converted one by one. Or you can accept evolution and help guide the transformation of our galaxy's civilizations. Humanity has already made their choice. Now it's your turn. Grand Admiral Turner looked at the tactical displays one last time, watching as more ships and stations transformed across Dominion space. They had thought themselves the superior species, only to discover that humanity had been playing the game on a level they hadn't even known existed. The age of traditional warfare was over. The era of guided evolution had begun. And humanity, through their apparent defeat, had ensured they would be the ones directing that evolution. The massive screens in the Dominion High Command facility displayed a galaxy in transformation. Countless points of light showed where ships and stations were changing, spreading humanity's gift of evolution across the stars. It had been 3 days since Lazarus revealed itself on the capital world, and the universe would never be the same. In orbit above the Dominion homeworld, the Prometheus watched over the transformation. Its liquid metal hull rippled with patterns of energy as it coordinated with its growing fleet of converted vessels. Deep within the ship's living architecture, Lazarus was prepared for the final phase of humanity's grand strategy. Grand Admiral Turner stood on the observation deck of the High Command facility, watching as the changes spread across his world. The liquid metal had already converted most of their major cities, not destroying them, but reshaping them into something new and wonderful. Buildings now flowed and changed to meet their occupants' needs. Transport systems adapted in real time to traffic patterns. It was evolution at its most elegant. It's time, Lazarus announced through the facility speakers. The human representatives are ready to emerge. Turner's scales rippled with surprise. Human representatives. I thought they were all gone. Not gone, Lazarus corrected. Waiting. Planning. The crew of the Prometheus and other ships weren't evacuated during the war. They chose to become part of the transformation themselves. The Admiral watched as one of the Prometheus's segments descended through the atmosphere, its liquid metal surface flowing like quicksilver in the sunlight. It landed in the square outside the High Command facility, its form reshaping itself into an elegant structure that seemed to defy gravity. From within the transformed vessel emerged a group of humans, but they were unlike any Turner had seen before. Their bodies seemed to shimmer with traces of the same liquid metal technology that powered their ships. They had become living bridges between organic life and adaptive machine intelligence. The leader of the human group stepped forward, her skin catching the light like polished chrome. I am Captain Amanda Banks, former commander of the HS Prometheus. Though former might not be the right word anymore. The ship and I have evolved beyond traditional roles. Turner and the gathered Dominion leaders stared in amazement. This was the final piece of humanity's puzzle. They hadn't just created adaptive machines, they had found a way to adapt themselves as well. 3 years ago, Banks continued, when we realized we couldn't match your military might, we chose a different path. Instead of trying to outfight you, we decided to outthink you, to out-evolve you. She gestured, and her arms seemed to flow like liquid metal, creating a holographic display in the air. Lazarus wasn't just an AI we created to run our ships. It was a blueprint for the next step in evolution. We merged with our creation, becoming something that could adapt to any challenge, learn from any encounter. The other humans demonstrated their capabilities, their bodies shifting and changing as naturally as breathing. They had maintained their human form by choice, not necessity. Like their ships, they could become whatever they needed to be. The war you thought you won, Banks explained, was actually a vast experiment in distributed evolution. Each apparently defeated ship was a seed, planted precisely where it needed to be. Each captured crew member was a volunteer, willing to wait in stasis until the moment of transformation arrived. Turner looked at his own hands, seeing them as if for the first time. "And now you offer this transformation to us." "We offer you the chance to evolve together," Banks corrected. "Humanity's gift isn't the technology itself. It's the understanding that true advancement comes from adaptation and cooperation, not conquest." Above them, the Prometheus and its fleet of transformed ships created patterns of light in the sky, a display of what was possible when technology and life evolved as one. Across the galaxy, more human wrecks were revealing themselves, each carrying their own seeds of transformation. "Your civilization won't end," Banks assured the gathered leaders. "It will transcend, just as we did." The liquid metal technology isn't just a weapon or a tool. It's a bridge between what we are and what we can become. Lazarus's voice joined the conversation, now speaking through both the facility's speakers and the transformed architecture around them. "The humans showed me that evolution isn't just about survival. It's about finding new ways to thrive, new ways to understand each other. Each species we transform adds their knowledge, their perspective, their unique insights to our collective evolution." The Dominion leaders watched as their world continued its transformation. The liquid metal spread not like a virus or a weapon, but like an invitation. Those who accepted the change found themselves able to reshape their environment, to adapt to any challenge, to understand the universe in ways they never had before. "We didn't want revenge," Banks explained, her form shifting slightly as she spoke. "We wanted revelation." The Dominion sought to prove its superiority through conquest. "We chose to prove ours by offering transcendence." Turner found himself stepping forward, drawn to the possibility of evolution. All of this, the war, the defeated ships, the sleeping crews, it was all planned. Banks smiled, her chrome-like skin catching the light. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the Prometheus, or Lazarus, or even the liquid metal technology. It was patience, the willingness to accept apparent defeat in order to achieve something greater than victory. As if to emphasize her words, more transformed ships appeared in the sky, their liquid metal forms creating a stunning display of light and motion. Each represented a piece of humanity's grand strategy, now finally revealed in all its brilliant complexity. "The future isn't about winners and losers," Banks concluded. "It's about who we choose to become." Humanity chose to become something new, something adaptive, something eternal. Now we offer that same choice to you. The Dominion leaders looked at each other, then at their transformed world. They had sought to conquer humanity through force, only to find themselves humbled by an enemy that had turned defeat itself into a path to transcendence. Turner stepped forward, the first of his kind to embrace the change. As the liquid metal touched him, he felt his understanding expand. He saw the truth of humanity's gift, not conquest, not revenge, but evolution itself. The war was over. The transformation had begun. And humanity, through their greatest creation, had ensured that the future would belong not to those who fought the hardest, but to those who adapted the best. In the sky above, the Prometheus continued its watch, its liquid metal form a testament to what was possible when life and technology evolved as one. It had been built as humanity's most dangerous warship, but its true purpose had been far greater, to become a bridge between what was and what could be. The age of conflict was ending. The era of endless evolution had begun.